A while ago, we made a video chronicling Reddit's clampdown on freedom of expression and increasingly authoritarian attitude towards its users. That video was based on information curated by communities on Reddit that monitor Reddit's decline into censorship. I was glad that video was completed in time, since it doesn't look like those communities will continue to exist for very long. Subreddits dedicated to criticizing Reddit have sadly become an endangered species due to Reddit's latest crusade on censorship. Predictably, Reddit refuses to announce this prohibition or codify it in an amendment to their policy. They don't have the integrity to be honest or transparent. Instead, they continue banning communities they dislike despite no rules being broken, and justify these bans by presenting false pretexts that are easily debunked. For an example, let's take a second look at a subreddit we talked about in our last video, Y'all Can't Behave. This was a community dedicated to chronicling the tyrannical behaviour of the volunteers that manage the most popular subreddits. To be more specific, they documented instances of volunteers abusing their powers to shut down discussions they didn't like and blaming their communities for it, telling users that the discussion was locked because y'all can't behave. Nothing about this broke any rule in Reddit's content policy, but Reddit wanted them gone anyway. Why? We cannot say for certain, but we suspect they didn't want to allow users to make fun of the volunteers who perform most of the management of the website, even if they abuse their powers. You can't even talk about the clique of connected volunteers that have colluded to appoint each other into positions of control over all of the most popular and active subreddits. Employees actively remove any discussions about it for harassment. This does nothing to address the complaints of users who have noticed the volunteers' abuse of powers, many of whom have been targeted for censorship by the clique. Many of these users pleaded with the CEO to limit the number of subreddits volunteers can control to curb the degree of power they can consolidate. His reply typified his apathy and was poorly received by the user base. I'm the first to say our governance systems are imperfect. He has quite the nerve to begin with a bold-faced lie. He's the last person to admit his systems are imperfect, if he ever admits it, that is. But I also think the concept that these mods control numerous large subreddits is inaccurate. He's literally denying reality and banning the circulation of its evidence. We field hundreds of reports about alleged moderator abuse every month as part of our enforcements of the moderator guidelines. Clearly, you do not enforce them. In fact, this comment has stripped it of any legitimacy it had left. At this point, why even bother keeping the page up? Take it down, it does nothing but mislead users. The broad majority, more than 99%, are from people who undeniably broke rules, got banned and held a grudge. Another lie that is easily debunked. A very small number are one-off incidents where mods made a bad choice. If this is a very small number, what do you consider large? And a very, very small sliver are legitimate issues in which we can reach out and work to resolve these issues. You're not resolving anything going by the volunteers' deteriorating behaviour. Quite the contrary, you're giving them the green light to double down on their tyranny by turning a blind eye to their stranglehold on most of the website, banning anyone who points it out and prohibiting the distribution of proof. Whatever their motivation, Reddit didn't take kindly to y'all can't behave and ban the community. In doing so, they had to deal with a dilemma. What rule would they cite to justify the ban? They couldn't just point to any part of the policy that the community had violated because they hadn't broken any rule. To sidestep this issue, Reddit resorted to the shadiest practice we've seen in some time. They suspended all of the volunteers who created and managed the community, then banned the community for being unmoderated, which, by the way, is not a rule outlined in Reddit's content policy. This wasn't the first time Reddit had done this, and so this didn't blindside the volunteers, one of whom tried to stave off the ban by, ironically, locking the community to new submissions before he too was banned. Reddit is doing the same thing to the oldest volunteer monitoring community, Y'all Can't Play Nice. All of its volunteers have been suspended, though it has yet to be banned at the time of making this video. This indicates that criticism of volunteers is now a forbidden subject. But of course, no amendment was made to content policy to announce this. This wasn't even criticism. They just pointed out instances wherein the volunteers shut down discussions for no reason. The suspension of all of Yol Can't Behave's volunteers was so brazen that it caught the attention of people from other communities, some of whom tried to create alternatives like Yol Can't Behave 2 and YCB before Yol Can't Behave was banned for being unmoderated. They hoped their alternatives would survive Yol Can't Behave's inevitable ban. They were wrong. Their alternatives were banned for Ban Evasion. And here's where it gets interesting. The alternative, Yol Can't Behave 2, was banned for Ban Evasion hours before the original Yol Can't Behave was banned. If the original was still up at the time, the ban the alternatives were banned for evading didn't exist at the time. In other words, the alternatives weren't evading any ban, yet that was the reason Reddit cited to justify their termination. This may be the most immediately identifiable lie Reddit has peddled so far. Let's take a closer look at the practice of banning for Ban Evasion. Justification for banning communities for evasion is to uphold the original ban and to prevent circumvention of the original prohibition. Reddit seldom banned communities for evasion in the early 2010s, as this was a time when communities were banned only if they broke the rules explicitly stated in their policy. If users created another subreddit to replace the closed community, Reddit would ban the replacement for the rules it broke, which tended to be the same rule the original community was banned for breaking. This still held true whenever they introduced a new rule to ban outlaw content they viewed as problematic. The policy amendment gave them the cause to ban the community they disliked, and they could point to the new rule to ban any replacements. If the original community broke any of Reddit's rules, then so did the replacement, which provided the justification for their bans. Thus, Reddit didn't need to cite evasion as a cause for a ban when they could just point to the rules the replacement subreddit was breaking. Of course, Reddit can't cite the rules their target of censorship is breaking if the community isn't breaking any rules, hence the spike in bans for evasion. This reminds us of something the CEO said in an interview about a subreddit he censored.
We're trying to find the argument for removing them. We know what the answer is here. How can we get there? We're not sure quite how to ban it yet or how to justify this, but this is not what we want users seeing.
In other words, Reddit now uses ban evasion as a disingenuous pretext to censor certain subjects without announcing a rule against a targeted topic. Hence, we have to infer what is now prohibited by looking at what Reddit bans, and what they have banned are communities dedicated to monitoring their censorship. You aren't allowed to criticize them, or document its downfall, or look at who's got a stake in this or even remind them what they said. Fans of censorship can't even accuse the censored subreddits of hate speech to justify these baseless bans. Their communities weren't political. Instead, supporters of this censorship will probably argue Reddit as a private company can ban whatever they want to. While Reddit may have the legal authority to do whatever they like, we believe the users should be aware of what they're doing. Sadly, Reddit disagrees, as they are banning any community that talks about what they're doing. Even communities that reference the CEO's comments about Reddit swaying elections have been banned for evasion. This is a direct quote that Reddit has banned several communities for. I'm confident that Reddit could sway elections. We wouldn't do it, of course, and I don't know how many times we could get away with it. But if we really wanted to, I'm sure Reddit could have swayed at least this election, this once. Obviously, this doesn't break any of Reddit's rules. If it did, Reddit wouldn't need to cite evasion as a cause for banning any community that talks about it. They just cite the rule it broke, but no such rule exists. It would seem mighty strange and suspicious if Reddit were to introduce a rule that forbade discussion of anything the CEO said. It would draw attention to the broken promises that Reddit would rather bury in obscurity. While Reddit might not want to announce a prohibition in their policy, they still want to get rid of any community that talks about the CEO's comments, affirming Reddit's ability to sway elections and his promise of restraint. Since it didn't break any of the rules on their policy page, they had to resort to accusing the community of ban evasion. The user who created these communities appealed the ban, only to get denied by the employees after being banned from the employee administrative community he appealed in. When he asked the employees what communities his subreddits were banned for trying to recreate, the employees didn't respond. They couldn't respond without lying or admitting their justifications were false, as the communities that highlighted the CEO's comments on swaying were the first subreddits of their kind. If a community is the first of its kind, it's not recreating a previously banned community. The charge of ban evasion is demonstrably false, proven by Reddit's inability to name the banned subreddit the user was trying to recreate. So why do you think Reddit is censoring these communities so heavy-handedly? Leave your thoughts in the comment section below. This raises the question, what other communities is Reddit censoring this way? China owns Reddit, a community dedicated to Chinese corporate influence on Reddit. Triggered by the $150 million Chinese tech giant Tencent has invested into Reddit. If you're thinking the community hosted politically incorrect content that might have been hostile to Chinese people, that wasn't the case. This is what the community looked like before the ban. Why would Reddit want to hide this? Leave your thoughts in the comment section below. This gets more disturbing when you remember the time when Reddit quarantined a community dedicated to discuss the global epidemic, which was created before it became a global epidemic. This is the only subreddit that talks about the crisis and is relatively free of censorship, so its users tend to be critical of the Chinese government, something Reddit doesn't seem to like. Ironically, the quarantine community sounded the alarm well before any mainstream media outlets did. For their vigilance, the community was quarantined within a week of its creation, and its creator was permanently suspended from the entire website. And ironically, the community was quarantined for misinformation, a reason that had never been cited before. All other quarantines were applied for offensive content. This is the first time a community was quarantined for misinformation. For those who haven't watched our last video, quarantining a subreddit restricts it from being recommended to new users and greatly diminishes its discoverability. Users are warned to turn away from the subreddit and have to opt in to view the content. Furthermore, not all quarantines are created equal. Some quarantines are more restrictive than others. While Reddit hides the subscriber count of most quarantine communities, subreddits like Chapo Trap House and The Donald can still display the number of readers and users currently active on the community. On the other hand, certain quarantine communities can't even be accessed without verifying your email with Reddit. What could possibly justify this requirement? I don't know about you, but it feels increasingly sinister that Reddit may be storing a list of the emails of users that want to visit certain subreddits. What would they even do with such a list? We'd never know. If it is ever leaked, it's unlikely to surface on Reddit, given Reddit's recent clampdown of any community that criticizes or even monitors its censorship. Do their Chinese corporate interests have anything to do with it? Is this why Reddit does not tolerate discussion of their ties to Chinese corporations? Is it even safe to register your email with Reddit? Let us know what you think in the comment section below. As bad as all this sounds, it gets worse, as it always does. Reddit's response to the recent police incident is to use it to justify the continuation and expansion of their crusade on censorship. CEO Steve Huffman, who goes by Spez on Reddit, began by acknowledging his failure in declaring the policy he was enforcing. Sort of. We crafted our 2015 policy around behaviours adjacent to hate that were actionable and objective, violence and harassment, because we struggled to create a definition of hate and racism that we could defend and enforce at our scale. Through continual updates to these policies, 2017, 18, 19 and 20, and a broader definition of violence, we have removed thousands of hateful communities. While we dealt with many communities themselves, we still did not provide the clarity. This addresses our criticism in our last video, right? This is good, right? Well, no. With Spez, nothing is as straightforward as it seems. As we look to our policies, breaking Reddit was not a sufficient explanation for actioning a political subreddit. Neither is banning subreddits for trying to recreate a banned subreddit when you cannot name the community you accuse them of recreating, but you do it anyway. The majority of our top communities have a rule banning hate and racism, which makes us proud and is evidence why a community-led approach is the only way to scale moderation online. That said, this is not a rule communities should have to write for themselves, and we need to rebalance the burden of enforcement. Uh-oh, they're back at it, using real-life incidents as a justification to purge communities they don't like. Some may argue this isn't a bad thing, as the announcement only targets racist communities. But these aren't even the subreddits they're going to ban. How do we know this? Because they've banned them already. Spez admits as much. Through continual updates to these policies, 2017, 18, 19, 20, and a broader definition of violence, we have removed thousands of hateful communities. Clearly, racist subreddits can't be the target of this new purge since they don't exist anymore. Well, some have accused certain active subreddits of racism, but not the kind of racism Reddit would even care about. I cannot think of a single racist community that has survived to be the target of this purge. If racist subreddits aren't around to be the target, what is Reddit's new purge aiming at? We don't know for sure, but if current trends are anything to go by, anti-censorship communities are on thin ice and better prepare to move off-site before they're forced off the platform. The announcement didn't just hint at another purge. The other founder, Alexis or Nothing as he goes by on Reddit, resigned from the board and asked to be replaced by a black candidate. Some might consider this bizarre, but we think it's insufficient. If Reddit is serious about putting their white male guilt to good use, they should also get rid of the CEO, Spez. His non-white predecessors weren't nearly as terrible as he is. As chaotic and controversial as their tenures were, Reddit was a much better platform before Spez and Nothing returned. The reinstatement of these two has been disastrous for Reddit's user experience. How so, you might ask? You cannot criticize the people who run the platform. You may not criticize volunteers who lock discussions and ban users with no cause. You cannot criticize the employees who ban entire communities even though they break no rules. Forget criticizing them. You cannot even point to the people in power, what they're doing and why they're doing it. You cannot remind the CEO of the commitments he's made and how he's breaking them. Why does this matter? In 2016, the CEO edited comments that criticized him to say something entirely different from what the commenter intended and published. Worse yet, his alteration did not affix the modified comment with an asterisk that is usually displayed when users edit their own comments to warn readers that the comment has changed since it was first published. Readers would have no way to know that the comment was edited, let alone by an invisible third party. Make of that what you will. To be fair, the chief executive orangutan owned up to this, but only after he was caught with his hand in the jar trying to steal a peanut. His manipulation was brought to light by the volunteers who ran The Donald, a community dedicated to President Trump. The Donald has since become inactive and closed to new submissions after Reddit removed most of the volunteers and enforced its rules. If the CEO edited users' comments today, you wouldn't be able to talk about it on The Donald. But where else could you talk about it? Given Reddit's censorship of critical communities, will we even know about it? Or would any mention of it be suppressed? Do you feel Reddit is safe to use? Leave your thoughts in the comment section below. What Reddit's clampdown on critics does is not silence criticism altogether, but move it to other platforms that they can't censor directly, like YouTube. Sadly, we couldn't find any other YouTubers talking about this, so we had to make these videos even if it isn't the kind of content you expect from this channel. Sorry if you're disappointed. If you found this video interesting, please like this video and share it too, because YouTube won't, and Reddit definitely won't. And now a brief update on the channel. Due to ongoing issues, upload frequency will be noticeably decreased. If you held off on ringing the bell for fear of notification spam, this channel won't contribute to the problem.